Hello everyone, welcome to Newsflash 312. My name is Spencer Walsh. Thank you so much for being here. Today on the show, we're taking a look at the European elections, what consequences they have for the Brexit movement, the future of the European Union, and the growing split over the Union's future. In Japan, Trump defended Kim Jong-un and attacked low-IQ Joe Biden, spelled B-I-D-A-N. The Indiana synagogue vandal, yes, another one, says he's been radicalized by Ben Shapiro, the far-right media. Take a look at the disturbing growing trend rising there. Take a look at some of the Connecticut governors doing that's not great. Take a look at Rahm Emanuel's relatively ridiculous piece in the Atlantic, 2020 Democratic Field Update, Bernie's Millions, and we're going to try to figure out how we can squeeze in a fun little clip there. Hope everyone's enjoying Memorial Day weekend, wherever you may be listening to this. Thank you so much for listening. All right. We start, of course, with the European elections. Though, populists and nationalists who want to chip away at the European Union's powers and increase their share in Europe's parliament after 4 days of continent-wide elections, but it was not the deluge that many traditionalists had feared. When the vote counting is done, the populists are expected to get up to 25% of the 751 seats, up from 20% 5 years ago, figures released by the EU show on Sunday. But a higher than usual turnout suggests that pro-European voters were also more motivated than before. So it was kind of a thing that kind of went both ways, because there's definitely a lot of people who still want to see this. Like, they're not all ready to throw the ship yet, but the fact that, again, on the other hand, there is so many people, so many voters in a rising tide against this is also very, very telling. So taken together, the results indicated that the struggle over the future direction of the bloc, more integration among European countries, or less, would only intensify, New York Times reports. With more of a voice in Parliament, populists and nationalists would be more likely expected to push harder on issues like controlling immigration and the budget. They're also more likely to try to gum up the plans of pro-Europeans, pressing for more power to go to the nations rather than to a bureaucracy they consider elitist. Still, anti-EU forces remain disparate and divided, and many have trouble wielding some significant power. Instead, the biggest impact was likely to be felt for far-right leaders and populists really in their home countries, particularly in France and Italy, where they're threatening to further disrupt the traditional party systems and angling to gain more power. They succeeded in that recently. For months, they had promoted these elections as a litmus test of their popularity, and it looks like it worked out pretty well for them. The electorate is crying out for change and therefore volatile, preferring to back new insurgents rather than status quo parties that have been around for decades. And Mark Leonard, the director of the European Council on Foreign Relations, the fear of a far-right takeover of the European Parliament has mobilized Europe's pro-European forces, resulting in a huge surge in turnout and support for green and liberal parties throughout Europe. Probably the biggest winners were the kind of the far-right and more populist parties and the Green Party. So that kind of was how it played out. Spanish socialists made important gains also in 3 elections, strengthening the hand of their prime minister, kind of unrelated. So that's kind of encouraging to see for people who want to see a little bit more of a left change, a left surge, a left ally for maybe AMLO or maybe Bernie in the west, towards the east. We have the guy in Spain. On Sunday, the results quickly reverberated across the political scene from Rome to Paris. In France, the vote results on Sunday suggested a difficult time ahead for President Emmanuel Macron, who's presented himself as the European champion of integration and a bulwark against those who wish to weaken it. His slate for the European Parliament being defeated by the National Rally Party of Marine Le Pen, an outspoken critic of the bloc, according to the final results. So yeah, it's kind of ironic, though, that obviously she wants to destroy it, but she had the most success getting on it. That is kind of what happened. His block, though, was very, very soundly defeated, so not very encouraging stuff. The defeat appeared to be by a small margin, but it would be enough to deal a symbolic blow to the young president. Le Pen called the result a vote for France and for the people. Macron's Prime Minister, Edouard Philippe, conceded defeat and said that he received these results with humility. He said that it was time for political leaders. They need to hear the message, and it was time for action. Turnout was expected to top 50% in France, significantly higher than the 42% of 5 years ago. The same is true for the EU as a whole, with an increase in turnout, with the first increase in turnout in 40 years and the best since 1994. Because people know, like this is the most serious threat to the creation, to the survival of the EU in history, in the European Union's history. Like it's just that simple. Like there are a lot of very strong forces that are opposing it, and a lot of very strong forces that want to keep it going. So it's just going to be that kind of very intense force, kind of against the like both sides know. Like this is going to be one of the biggest times for them in the future. So they are certainly acting like it. In Germany, where the turnout was also very high, the Greens did very well, becoming the main party on the left, while the Social Democratic Party did very badly, which may prompt the party to leave the existing coalition. The largest party, the governing Christian Democrats, also lost some ground, while the far-right populists, the Alternative for Germany, got about 11%. It appeared to be a weaker showing for the party than in the national election of 2017, when it won 12.6%. So that's good, because the Alternative for Germany is not a good alternative. Let's just say that. Kind of harkens back to the Germany of old. In the European Parliament, with the decline of mainstream parties and increased fragmentation, for the first time in 40 years, the center-right and center-left would no longer control a majority. Both lost ground, with centrist liberals, Greens, and populists all gaining. Yeah, so while pro-European mainstream parties appear to have won about two-thirds of the seats, the center-right and center-left will have to cooperate in coalition with the Liberals, helped by Macron's party, to form a sustainable majority, and the Greens, who did well all over the continent, will also have a louder vote as well. A louder voice as well. So leaders of the two mainstream parties in European Parliament ruled out working with the far right and appealed for cooperation among pro-European parties. So that's kind of what makes sense. That's what they should be doing. Because obviously the far right, they want to destroy the European Union. They don't want to have a European Union anymore. So it's just that simple. So yeah, Manfred Weber, leader of the center-right European People's Party, said Sunday, from now on, those who want to have a strong European Union have to join forces. He said his group would not cooperate with any party that does not believe in the future of the European Union. Centrists took some solace in the results as well, saying, quote, defying the doomsayers once again, Europe continues to muddle through reasonably well, said Holger Schmeiding. That's quite a name. Chief economist of Bernberg, it's a German bank. Previous gains for populist parties at the national level, as well as the challenges of Trump, China, Russia, have elicited some counter-reaction from a pro-European mainstream. He called it largely part of a healthy debate about the future of European integration. And who knows what we're going to see from here. I mean, certainly these populist forces are not going to give up. They're definitely not going to give up. And it's going to be interesting to see how they choose to go do next. Because like this is kind of the fight for everything they've always believed in. And they're going to continue for this fight for a long time. That's for sure. They're not going to wane pretty quickly. Marine Le Pen continues to be a pretty viable threat in France. Got Nigel Farage, the craziness over Brexit. Theresa May stepping down, though, that is a pretty big deal. But it's going to be interesting to see how Labour continues to go, because they seem to be right now the party on the rise with Corbyn. If they can figure out some of the kind of more warring faction problems in their parties. Labour has always, for a long time, actually really been a party kind of divided between the same way the Democratic Party is now. Like both in the US and the UK, there are left versus liberal factions kind of fighting it out right now, and that's going to be a very important fight for the future of politics in general. So, in Greece, in a bad defeat to Conservatives, Prime Minister Alexis Tsipras of the left populist Syriza party called for early elections, probably to take place in June instead of October. He is thought to want to limit the party's anticipated losses to New Democracy, which is expected to win control of the government. In Belgium, which held national and regional elections as well, there was a big victory for the Dutch-speaking north of Flanders for Vlaams Belang, a far-right anti-immigration separatist party. It may become the second largest party in the Flemish parliament, behind the NVA, which is another nationalist party. The Greens and Socialists also did well in Brussels, and French-speaking Wallonia. Yeah. So the German vote will be seen as kind of a judgment of the center-left Social Democrats on the far right, Alternative for Germany, and the new leader of the Christian Democrats, Annegret Kramp-Karrenbauer, who hopes to succeed Chancellor Angela Merkel. Italy was being watched to see how well its deputy prime minister, the rollicking populist Matteo Salvini, did against his coalition partners of the Five Star Movement. The fate of the coalition appeared to be at stake. Salvini remains Europe's champion, and kind of the poster boy of the anti-immigrant far right, at least in Italy for the time being. Italy was being kind of watched because Salvini's anti-immigrant populist league came in first. That kind of settled those doubts. With more than 34% said they got, easily surpassing the minimum necessary to be considered a success, according to provisional results. He aimed for more, though. Still, 5 years ago, the league only won 6.2% of the vote. Its coalition partner, the left populist Five Star Movement, was running third to the Socialist Democratic Party. Mr. Salvini cast the vote as referendum on Europe and has improved his claim to lead the Euro-antagonistic and nationalist forces inside the European Union. While the varying populists will try to vote as a bloc, they are not expected to form a single grouping, as there are fervent differences among them, like among them on issues like Russia, regional aid, and the distribution of migrants among the blocs. So that's going to be the big thing they have to work about, because they all have the same broadly populist positions, especially on economic issues. But when it comes to kind of more social issues, more humanitarian issues, that's really is unsurprisingly where they differ. Like you got on one hand, people be like, let's not bring in immigrants, and sure. On the other hand, you have people like socialist type people, Green Party type people that say, yeah, why not? We should be able to bring them in. So yeah, that is it's very tough. I know the parties, for a lot of Americans, the parties can be, this many parties really could be kind of head-spinning, but we will here at Newsflash help you kind of sort things out and kind of make sense of things. So, all right. Yeah. Now we turn back to the United States and get to a more familiar man, the president himself, the man, the big wet boy, real Donald Trump. Going to Japan, folks, as constituents back home headed into a long Memorial Day weekend. Donald Trump continues track of embarrassing himself on the world stage by praising a brutal dictator and attacking an American political opponent in hilarious fashion. While there's no limit to Trump's depravity, his tweet Saturday praising North Korean dictator Kim Jong-un while Trump is in Japan, no less, and attacking the Democratic presidential candidate and former Vice President Joe Biden somehow reaches kind of a new low. Like, in a normal world, there would be, like, serious outrage of this tweet, like, literally attacking a political opponent in such a kind of vile way, throwing around the word treason in the way he did. Like, that in it of itself was kind of shocking, but the fact that we kind of continue to see this happening with kind of, like, little to no retribution is kind of a thing that we're pretty much just used to it. We're pretty much used to taking it all in, taking the glory of this presidency all in, just little by little at this point. So, yeah, let's see what he was up to. On Saturday, his national security advisor, John Bolton, said the missile test conducted by North Korea earlier this month violated the UN security resolution designed to rein in the country's nuclear weapons and ballistic missile programs. So yeah, like that's pretty much what they are in blatant violation. And again, it's pretty much all because of Trump kind of unwinning his wins. Like, if that's even possible. Just being, like, somehow, through just sheer willpower, working his way to possibly a major thing, but something worthy of credit, worthy of praise, which is a deal with North Korea. And then somehow through sheer willpower, sheer stupidity, whatever it is, kind of unworking that position and being like, okay, we're not going to do that anymore. We're just going to get into fights. That's what it was. And then North Korea gradually starts to build up their nuclear program. And again, it comes back to the same thing. We see this with Iran. Why would you ever want to do a deal with America? Because you could have a guy like Obama who's kind of relatively willing to negotiate, relatively willing to kind of make a deal. But in 2 seconds, you could have someone like Donald Trump who could turn around and just blow things up and start all over again. It's the same thing with George Bush. As long as you got people like John Bolton floating around the government, peace, nuclear disarmament, like those are never viable options. Like it's just, like you're just not always. It's very, very rare that you're gonna see that happen. It's very, very rare that we're like, okay, this is gonna work out. Like, if you see a guy like John Bolton, the government, saying, "Oh, we could do the Libya option with North Korea," I think he said it with a few years ago. Like that is, like that's not an encouraging sight. Why would you ever want to negotiate with the United States when it comes to that? So yeah, like they violated this deal. Trump kind of